welcome to another episode of SidTalks. Hi guys, sorry for the technical issue. We will start the live. Uh, Welcome to this episode of SidTalks. Rahul Saini, who's part of the keep going session, and we will have some fun conversation. Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
I
Oh.
hope my video is better now.
Yeah, it got stuck for some reason. I don't know. Then,
Yes,
yeah.
I, I I think my net died in between. Something happened.
Okay.
That that is something I have gotten used to now. Instagram lives are nothing without interruption. It
Yeah.
become a part and parcel. So we were talking about vaccination. We were talking
Yeah.
about vaccination when we lost you.
I'm still to get
Yeah.
vaccinated yet. Yeah.
Okay. So I hope that you get your start really soon.
Yeah.
And
Or else just stay put at home and
yeah, I think that's a better option.
Yeah.
Stay home and read.
Yeah.
So Rahul, let's begin. This is the second interaction that we are having, and a lot of people have joined us who did not witness our interaction when we had it the last time. So a couple of questions I am borrowing from my previous session. So what was your inspiration behind adding writing to your list of identities, apart from being an architect and a photographer and a traveler? What motivated you to write?
I seriously have no clue what I said last time, but I'm gonna say what I feel right now. Um, You see, so when I think I'll trace the thought and eventually get back there what I said last time. So you go to school and you are fed with all the morals and the ethics and be a good citizen, be a good person, be a good human being, and then you go to college and then that gets infused with the professional ethics that you should follow in order to do all of that better. But when you step out professionally, you understand that that's not going to happen, and that's not how things will be, because the kind of world that we live in, it has its own different dynamics, and the ethics, the older ethics that we are taught, are very different from what is followed in the world around us. So that whole punch of reality kind of unsettled me a lot, and because of that there was a lot of dissatisfaction, and because of that I had a lot to say. Back in my first book, there's this one line in which one of the characters, who's essentially my mouthpiece, he says that I did not spend 25 years of my life toiling the way I did just to sit in a cubicle like this and keep on lying. This is not the kind of this is not the kind of life I wanted. So I think that was the drive. That was the drive, and I always had a fascination with books. I believe, like when I was a little kid, I could hardly even write or probably talk properly. I had my grandfather's books as my toys. So it was something which always fascinated me, and I was like, what are these things, and who makes them and how are they made? And so that fascination was always there. And I always wanted to be a writer, but then you know how it is. It's not a lucrative profession. I understand that now. It's not
Right.
something you can make a life out of and live on. So that's why I was never encouraged to get into it heads on. I was told, do other things as well, get some good source of income, and then you can do this if you want to, but don't rely on it completely, which I completely
Right.
understand now. So those are the reasons why I ended up writing and why I started writing.
That's very you being honest, the stories are something that you were fascinated with as a child, and that's what you are doing right now. So, in the pandemic, a lot of things changed. So, how did that affect you as a person and as a writer?
The biggest thing that I've understood myself during the pandemic and during this time is I have got very low threshold for negative, disturbing, and violent stuff. I can't watch it on television anymore. The same movies which I used to enjoy a lot, stuff like Avengers or Guardians of the Galaxy, and even Jurassic Park for that matter. Those scenes of destructions are something which I can't take anymore. So that's definitely one change that the pandemic has thrown at me. And and also, like, if you see my previous book, Love to Hurt You, it's very negative, it's very dark. And I was working on another book which kind of had a similar tone, and it's just like a month or two back, I have decided I will write that story. The incidents will not change, but the tone and the presentation is going to be different, because I don't really want to throw anything negative out there in the world. So I'll say the same story, I'll say the same stuff, but it's going to be a different tone. So these are the changes that I have experienced.
Okay. Yeah, this is interesting. You actually, when you mentioned that you have moved away from violence and gore and all that. So this was going to be my next question about your previous book, which was essentially a BDSM novel.
I wouldn't really call it
So,
a BDSM novel, but yes, very violent. And I just used
yes,
tool of BDSM to push an idea. But if people want to read it as a BDSM novel, I'm good with it.
they can.
Yeah.
Right. So, what is your writing process like? You have written multiple books across genres. So, does your writing process change with each book, or is it essentially the same?
So I don't have any writing process as such. You know, every book kind of happens differently. There were certain books in which I had a very clear plot in my mind. This is going to be the beginning, this is going to be the end, and in the middle, this is going to happen. These will be the conflicts. All of that was very clear in my mind from the very beginning. There have been certain books for which I only knew that there will be this character, and this is the idea that I want to push. You know, so it's different. So, like, if we talk about the part I left with you, I just knew there's going to be this one author who is in not a very good state, and there's going to be a girl who's going to come and she's a fan, and I knew. I knew very clearly what the guy was going to be like. I knew very clearly what the girl was going to be like, and that was it. So whatever happens, all the incidents, the way the story unfolds, everything, all of that happened very organically. And of course, I had a very clear idea what are the ideas that I want to push. All those thoughts and ideas which Ronit keeps talking about, those were very clearly laid out, that these are the things that character is going to talk about.
This actually comes out in the book as well, because when I was talking about the book in my review also, I mentioned that the characters were driving the story rather than the story inspiring the characters. So I think your thought process actually came through in the book when we focused a lot on Ronit and Ratna and the other characters, which which pushed the story forward rather than it dragging itself.
Uh, if you ask me, there's no story. If you ask me, there's no story in the part I left with you. It's a long conversation between two sets of characters. There's Ratna
Right.
and Ronit, and there's Natasha and I've forgotten his name. Vikas, right?
Because
So it's a long conversation between these two sets of people who were once together and now they are away from each other, and they are just talking about their ideas of life and their ideas about everything around them and what they want out of life and what they have not got and what they're trying to get. So that's it. I don't think there's any story. So that said, I after reading as much as I have read, after studying literature as much as I have come to this one conclusion, that there is no story that has not been told. and there's nothing that
Right.
will happen to us which has not happened to someone. So from that point of view, there is no new story left to be told. The times will change. It happened
Hmm.
to a different kind of person first. Now it's happening to a different kind of person. Those
Right.
kind of changes will occur, but there will be no new story. So, and when I realized that, I see, developing a plot was never my forte anyway. None of my books are heavy on plot or driven by plot. That's not something which I was ever good with. But when I saw this happening in literature, I was like, I don't even need that, like, because everything has been said already. So that's not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on something else. I want to focus on how the characters' minds play with them, and who are they, what are the philosophies that they follow. And this book was very experimental. As I said, there is no story. So and publishers, when you take, so I'm labeled as a commercial fiction author. So when I go to a publisher, the first thing they look at is plot tight hona chahiye. And that's where I want to hide somewhere, because plot to hai nahi. So so
Plot है.
so this book was,
ज़्यादा ही टाइट हो गया.
yeah, so this book was a very experimental book, and I'm very happy the way people are responding to it, because they're actually understanding what I'm trying to say. Uh, the reviews that are coming all around, all over, they are thankfully very positive, and people are appreciating the kind of philosophies that are being talked in the book, and that was my whole intention in the first place. This was one book which I was like, I am not going to model it according to anyone's wishes, and let this be the last book if I ever write one. But this is going to go out the way it is right now, because I've compromised enough in the past with all the suggestions that I've been given, and let's not do that this time. So just do what I want to do.
Yeah, in fact, this is actually seen in the book when you read it, and it's been across Instagram and social media. It's been, I think, just a month the book has come out, and a lot of people have read it, and a lot of people are talking about the book. That's actually encouraging to see, especially when you're saying that you took a risk with this book. So, and when people actually talk about the book, it shows that the point actually holds water. That you don't need lot for this become success.
Yeah, and so people are generally not honest as I am. My previous books had not worked. It was long back since any of my book worked and sold well, and it's after a long time it's happening now. So my career was on a nosedive, going down, 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 and I was like, if this book doesn't work, then I'll need to consider how things happen from here on. But thankfully, things have happened well.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. In fact, it's very true. Uh, Before moving on and we talk about the part I left with you in detail, I would like to say hello to Tigger and Dino.
Oh,
We
oh
haven't
yeah,
seen them on Instagram for a while.
yeah.
Hi.
Tigger's here. Where's Dino? Dino's on my table, I guess. But Tigger's there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we? Yeah. Okay. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. So guys, if you haven't checked out those couple of videos, you should, because they are actually stars on their own account. So do check out the covers that Rahul has made. Let's move on to the book. As we were talking, the part I left with you is diametrically opposite to your last book, uh, Love to Hurt You. So, how difficult was it to shift gears and start writing this book on a completely different note?
So people will find this surprising, but Love to Hurt You and The Part I Left With You were one single book. They were not two different books.
Oh,
So I wrote them simultaneously along with each other. So they were not written one after another. The idea that I was playing with was that, the world has become very negative. I don't have any doubts about it. When I was younger, things were very positive, promising, nice. Now it's all bleak and dark and threatening, and almost what we have stepped into a certain kind of dystopia already. So, a few years back, I think it was 5 years back or so, when the political scene had become very unstable, and things were happening differently, and things started happen which we had never heard of before. So I just was wondering that, these are my responses to what is happening, but then different people respond to the same things differently, and I could see all of that around me. My friends were responding to everything, sorry, very differently. I was responding to them very differently. So I was like, what if I try writing a story about a set of people who are very different people but subjected to the same stimuli? So they respond very differently. So if you go back to Love to Hurt You, things are very dark, things are very bleak, and the people about whom the story is, they are very aggressive, and they don't mind, compromising with their ethics. So that what those kind of people might end up doing in that kind of an environment, and what will eventually happen to them. That is what Love to Hurt You is. And that's what I meant when I said, it's not a BDSM novel. I was trying to say something else. So that's what the idea was. When you look at the part I left with you, it's the same thing. Everything around them is going wrong. But these are a very positive set of people who are very bright, who want to make things right, or who won't give up, or even if they give up, they don't go out destroying the world like the other book did.
Right.
So and the chapters were, they were switching one chapter from this story, then one chapter from the other story, then one. This is how the format was. So when the publishers read it, they said that, Rahul, it's an abstract idea that you're playing with, and the plots are not intertwining. So either you intertwine the plots, because the reader is not going to get what you're trying to say. It's too far-fetched for a regular reader to understand the abstract presentation that you're giving here. So kisi ko, it's not going to make any sense to anyone. So either intertwine the plots somehow, or make them two different books. So I didn't want to change the story because that would have been a bigger compromise. So I just made these like two different books. So that's how the book happened. And it was easy actually, because on one side I was writing things which were completely dark, completely negative, and on the other side I was just doing the flip of it. I was writing something very positive, upbeat, and optimistic. So the negativity was giving a clue for the positivity, and the positivity was giving a clue for the negativity. So that's how it happened. So from that point of view, it was
Balancing it out.
not difficult. Yeah, it was helping each other to build up. Those two stories were helping each other to build up.
Right. Now I will have to actually go back and read them chapter wise alternatively to see how you are actually planning the book.
Well,
It's an interesting concept.
if the previous book picks up again, and if both the books do well, which is like sell more than 20,000 copies, then I'll approach my publisher and propose this idea of, have a special edition with which is a tie-up of the two books. But it's a far-fetched
It would
idea as for
actually,
now.
yeah, but it would be interesting. It would be something unique as well. It's sort of a magnet with positive and negative in the same set.
But so when it comes to abstract art, it's always very difficult to interpret, and two, abstract art by default, by nature, has to be open for interpretation by the end user, the reader or the beholder. So that is where things become tricky. Since it's abstract, is open to interpretation, and if people don't get that interpretation which I was trying to push, things will not work, and that's where it becomes a failure. So it's a very tricky rope to walk. It's a very tight rope to walk.
True. So let's talk about the inspiration, and I'll talk about the part I left with you, because it seems to be a very personal story by the way it comes out. So what inspired you to write the story?
The disagreements that I have with things, if you've read it, you would know there's a whole section about how students have stopped respecting their teachers and how it is damaging them. Then the same conversation goes on and talks about all the negativity that is being thrown on us and how it's impacting our mind, and how relationships are sugar coated and misrepresented in the stories as they actually are in the real life, and how people get swayed and end up taking wrong decisions in their life because of that representation, all of that. So these are all my personal disagreements with the things around us, which happens in my own field. It happens in the media. So people of my own fraternity are responsible for that. That was the inspiration. That was the drive.
Yeah, because it jumps out, because the way it's written, it actually shows, that it comes from your own life, and especially when you talk about an author, so it shows that you have drawn some parallels with your own life as well. So looking back, how was the publishing experience this time different from getting published pre 2019?
Two things, Sid. One is the reader has evolved a lot. The readers have become more intelligent, and I don't hesitate to say that. And they want more. I call it juice. They want more juice from the text, and I understand why that's happening. Back in 2009, when my first book came, things were very different. There were only cinema halls, and there were only laptops, to watch movies and shows and stories. The bank was limited. You had to download them. The download speeds were terrible. We know. I'm talking of the era of dial-up connection and that characteristic ringing ting 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 pating, that
Right,
sound.
right, right.
So it was not easy to access movies and shows. So your access to stories was limited. And that is why people used to read more. If you look at the figures of book sales of fiction category now, it's dropped. Books overall are doing well. Non-fiction is selling like never before. Academic books are on a high. Children's books are on a high. Coloring books are on a high. These books are selling more than fiction has ever sold before. So overall, the picture for the publishing industry is very good. But if you look at fiction, may it be Indian or international, the sales have gone down. And I understand why that is, because fiction is read to experience and go through stories. We have so many more mediums now. We have so many more options to expose ourselves to stories. I just got to know that that book Underground Railroad is on Amazon Prime now. So the series is out. I was planning to read the book, but when I got to know, okay, the series is out already, then I was like, okay, there is so much to read already. I have so much of work to do. So should I sit down, read the book, or should I just watch the show? Funny as it is, the show is, I think, 10 episodes, and the book is like some 300 pages. So it's not gonna take me that long to read the book, because if it's like gonna be like 10 hours plus, that's the kind of time that book will take as well, because it's not that fat a book. But still, I was considering, maybe I can watch the show and read the book later, or how to do it. So when it comes to stories, this is what a basic reaction will always be, because in an adaptation, you get exposed to the story. Now, going back to the way I used to write before, and the way I think all the other authors also used to write, we were telling stories, ज़्यादा philosophy नहीं था, ज़्यादा psychology नहीं था, कुछ नहीं था, but हम story बता रहे थे, and people used to read that because stories का access limited था. आज की डेट में अगर कोई किताब उठा के पढ़ रहा है, they just are not looking at a simple storyline. They want a lot more from it. They want a lot take home from that. I think that is why this book of mine is standing out, because it's not just a story. It throws so much at your mind and brain that you will end up thinking differently, or you will end up knowing a lot more about things that you never knew before. So I think that's why the fiction category is experiencing different sales now. And that's what I meant, that the reader has changed. So because when my people look, and then they were asking me, what other books have you written? So please suggest some books. So I started suggesting them, and they were like, nahi, utna maza nahi aaya. You know, because there's not so much of juice in it. You
Right.
understand? So that's how I think the publishing industry has changed, and working with Juggernaut has been a tremendous experience. The kind of editing that I had on this book is something which I had never experienced before. So their editing team is so good. It's not even funny. It's hard to believe. You know that how good they are at their editing. It's hard to believe.
It actually shows in the final print of the book as well, because as a reader, if you have an amazing experience in a properly edited book without spelling errors or grammatical errors, it it adds to the experience, because even if you spot one error, it takes you away from the track. So I
Uh,
think that's important.
So no, when I say editing, I just don't mean copy editing, because copy editing is like the last proofread karna hai, wo sab karna hai, so that's different. By editing, I mean, sitting down with the story and dissecting it and understanding what character is working, which character is not working, why is it not working, what can be done, what needs to be removed, what is redundant, that stage of editing.
Right.
So that is something
That's very detailed.
which was phenomenal with Juggernaut.
That's very detailed, actually. Taking the story apart, that's a good job, actually.
I'll tell you. Natasha's whole arc was something which happened because of the suggestion of my reader. Sorry, my editor. So she
Okay.
was like, Rahul, isko develop karo. Abhi nahi baat ban rahi. So she was the one who made me sit down and write all those chapters after I had written the whole manuscript. So that's the kind of involvement I'm talking about. Otherwise, publishers would say it's not working. We don't want this, so we can't
Okay.
publish it. They'll pass. So that's how things are.
No, that's actually good, because when the publisher and the author are both invested, it actually shows up in the book and in the story and in the marketing. So it's the entire chain that gets affected. So, what's one thing that's bugged you the most while writing this book?
Nothing really. Nothing really. But if it comes to the painful process in the process of publishing a book, it is definitely editing. Reading the same text over and over again.
Over
You
and
know,
over again.
reading it with a lens to figure out any errors or any typos or any grammatical mistakes or a comma here and there. That's the part which I just don't enjoy. So that's the most painful part for me.
Another thing that stands out about the book is its cover, which is very minimalistic. So, what was the thought that actually went behind the cover?
For that, you should ask the designer, Amit Malhotra, I think. And yeah, so for that, you should ask Amit. He is Amit Malhotra. He's definitely a phenomenal. He won an award actually recently for another cover that he had designed for another book. So. And this cover stands for itself. The only brief that the editor and me, we had given was that let's have something on the lines of the cover of my first book is what I had in my mind. The title and little bits from the story here and there, which just tease you a bit about the story and tell you what is inside, and some sense of nostalgia and stuff like that. So that's all the brief that we had given him, and he came up with this, and I think it's so masterfully done. The choice of the colors, the figures here, the choice of the objects, here and there. Of course, the editor was also involved in the choice of the objects. I think that's what she had written to Amit ki ye wale objects dalo. But one thing is that when I had so the cover was being designed, we had options of different color options and stuff like that and all of that. So this was finalized, and I was happy with it, and I was like, yes, very excited. But when I actually got the book and when I held it in my hands, what really struck me was the proportions of everything on the cover.
Right.
And I think that's the work of a master who can understand that, this is the size. So this is the size of the objects there, and that's how it will look. So the credit goes to the designer completely.
No, actually, because even I remember getting the book and opening the envelope, and the cover actually stands out. You know, the people sitting, people reading. There's a cup of coffee. As you mentioned, the little objects actually make it very interesting, and the color is very unique. The shade of blue that they've used is interesting and actually becomes a part of the story because you are imagining things the way you see the book. From the cover, let's move on to the title. So, was this the title all along, or
No.
was it in
No.
the end we decided something else?
Uh, I had like a series of bad. So I'm very bad with titles. I'll be very honest with this. And this title is something which I had not come up with. Again, the credit goes to my editor. So so if she's listening to this, the credit completely goes to her. I did not come up with the title. That's completely her child. I had a set of bad titles, you know. I had things like The Scent of Our Times and, Bloody Hearts and a huge list of such bad titles. Because, and I think that's one thing again, which my publishers would find very unnerving because on the cover page, no, I don't just put untitled or one title of the book. I'll have like 5 to 6 titles, this or this or this or this or this, and and that's how it goes. And I can understand someone looking at that and getting confused. You know, what the hell is this? Like, why is the person so confused? So. So she read the book and she was like that, let's go with this title, and that works. So
So, like like Ronit. So I'll put you in Ronit's situation. How would you react if someone like Ratna arrives at your door one day and poses the exact same questions? What would be your reaction?
I don't think there'll be anything different than what Ronit did. I honestly think there won't anything be different at all, because because when I was writing Ronit, I wasn't thinking about another character. I was just thinking how would I respond to it.
Yeah, in fact, that was the image I had. So that's why I decided to put this question because when I was reading, I had the same image. So I could
It might
actually see
it might have
you.
stretched a little differently. Like for story purposes, I had to tighten it up. I might have stretched it differently. I would have invited her to come in, and then she would have sat, and then I would have expected her to leave. Then she wouldn't have left, and then I would have asked, so what's the problem? I would have been a lot more politer. I would have been a lot more polite, but the actions would have been the same. Like I would not have been that mean with her. Like I would not be that.
Less, a little less.
Yeah, that tongue lashing would not have been there. But in terms of taking decisions and letting things happen the way they did, I don't think there would have been anything different.
Okay. So, what was the what was the thing that made you end the book with a letter? It could have been a simple story, but why did it actually end with the 2 letters?
I always feel that we meet people, then we part, and at times we know that we're not going to meet these people again. So, in that situation, how do you part? So, that is something which I have always dealt with, a small little gift and a note. So that's my personal way of saying that I understand that we may not be able to meet as frequently as we used to. And if another friend is going to another country altogether, and you know that you're not going to meet them again, so that's how I generally bid my goodbyes. So that's just my personal way of dealing with it. So that's what's coming through.
Right. So, do you think romance as a genre works in India?
So the genre work all through the world, and it's a very basic emotion, and people will always want to read more stories about love. Like I won't call this a love story, but it's a story about love. So I think it works, and it'll always do, because that's a very basic human emotion.
Right. So, what are you working on next?
So there's this another story which is very negative and dark and everything, which I told you about. So after I finished writing the first draft, I'm going to rewrite everything, make it a little lighter and funnier and all of that. I am also thinking of continuing Ronet's character, maybe take the same name forward as well, and just see that, so I have a certain idea in mind, but I don't know yet that I want that to happen to Ronet or not. So so that's what. But that book again is on the similar lines of what the part I left with you is. So it's gonna be again a mouthpiece for me to say all the things that I want to say about certain stuff.
So another thing that you usually do is read a lot and talk about books. You have your own YouTube channel where you talk about books. So what are you reading currently?
So there is this one book which is kind of for research for the next book. It's a very old book. It's called God and Evil. It's basically my grandfather's book. So it's that battered and everything. So it's like a discussion about if God is there, why does God let all the bad things happen? And if He's not there, then why do So that kind of a discussion. So that's one. And I started reading Underground Railroad. So that's another one. I think I'll finish it. I want to, but if the violence and the gore becomes a bit too much, I'm just gonna go and watch the show. Eye of the World is one book which I've been reading for a while now. It's been on and off, but it's a fat book and I'm taking forever to read it. I'm just like, I think some 300 pages in. No, just 200 pages in. So so that's that. I am almost about to finish Feral Dreams. Now, this is one exciting book. It's a retake on Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book. So that's one book which I have really thoroughly enjoyed. It's gonna be the next video for my YouTube channel as well because it's a magnificent book. Going down the nostalgic lane again, I'm also reading David Copperfield. It's one book. Yeah, it's one book which I read way back in school, an abridged version, and I since then I've fallen in love with the story. So I wanted to just read that story once again. And Charles Dickens is actually the only classic author which I really enjoy. No other author really works for me from that era. So that's that. There's this book called Beast and Man. Again, it's for research for the same book that I told you about, that it talks about, do humans have animal instincts, and if it is so, how is it happening and all of that. Then we have the Mistborn book 2, Wells of Assertion, and I think I am again 200 pages in, so enjoying it. It's fun. And the last one is Clara and the Sun. Now this book it's so amazing, and I'm going to make a different YouTube video for a few pages of the book itself and explain what an engaging text is. So if you can see, there's a lot of marking, there's a lot of writing I've also done on this book, and that is what an engaging text does to you. It makes you think, it makes you identify, it makes you understand. So I was thinking of making one video and just talk about what an engaging text actually means. So so these are the books that I'm reading currently. I'm going to take about a month to finish all of these, but these are the books.
That's a lot of parallel reads. You have around 6 or 7 books you're reading currently.
Yeah, I didn't count, but must be 7.
Yeah,
1,
it's
3,
around
4,
that figure.
7. It's 8. It's 8.
So how do you choose when do you want to read what? Is it like a random thing?
So I'm not always in the same state of mind. So the two non-fiction that I picked up. So that's the kind of stuff I want to read when I am completely at peace. There's no distraction, and I can completely focus on the text, make notes, put all the highlights and all of that. So so those books are reserved for that time. Feral Dreams was a light read. So Feral Dreams was something which I was picking up, when there was a lot of stuff happening around. I knew I will be disturbed after 20-30 minutes or so and stuff like that. David Copperfield, I pick up and read before I go to sleep. because the beginning bit is very nice and pleasant and everything. So that's something which I want to, just pick up and read before I sleep. Wheels of Assertion and Wheel of Time. These are again. I know that I'm not mentally that active, but I have like 1 or 2 hours at hand.
Right.
So they're
I
not very
just wanted
mind
to read.
consuming books. They are like Eivor and all of that, but you can read it easily. So like that. And Clara and the Sun is something again which almost falls in the category of that non-fiction I told you about. So I need no disturbances. I need to have that book on my table, sitting with my pen, pencil, and highlighter, and then I want to read it. So it depends on my state of mind.
Right. So that's an interesting, perspective on reading. I think a lot of people would have picked up because what I do is I pick up one book, finish it off, then move on to the second one. Because I tend to get confused between stories, and I really I want to avoid that because then it becomes a bit difficult to come back to the books. So
So sorry, go on.
yeah, so that's what I because I think I'm done parallel reading only twice or thrice. And that too, it has to be one fiction, one non-fiction. Can't be two fiction at once.
So this is happening with me for the Eye of the World and Wheels of Assertion because both are fantasy. So they tend to start overlap in my mind. So that's a problem which I'm facing with those two books. But apart from them, all of them are so hugely distinctly different that I don't find them confusing. But I would prefer to start a book, finish it, and then move on to the other. But the kind of reading list I have, if I do that, I tend to become very anxious. That when am I going to finish it? ये शुरू ही नहीं किया है अभी तक, and all of that. There's so much still to read. So that's why I resort to reading multiple books at the same time.
So, Rahul, last question, and this I have picked up myself, and that's the question that's on the blurb. Do you believe that the meaning of love changes over time?
I very certainly do. It does.
So that was Rahul Saini, the author of The Part I Left With You. This is his latest book. The previous one was Love to Hurt You, and he has written a lot of books. And do check out his books. They are all available. They have some very interesting storylines. There's a review of the last two books on my Instagram account. You can check it out. You can check out Rahul's account for his books. For his book recommendations, he has done some amazing recommendations. Do check it out. Do check out his account to meet Tigger and Dino as well. And thank you, Rahul, for sparing time for this wonderful session. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful. And eat healthy and just get back to your best health as soon as good.
Thank you. And I really hope that this all gets sorted and we can do a physical interview real soon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rahul.
Okay.
And thank you guys for joining. It was a pleasure hosting you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you.